put a chat comment in there for everyone. We'll ask them to let us know where they're from.
Excellent.
If you got here early, reward yourself by letting us know where you're from. People from the UK, we got Ira from Princeton, got Anna Maria from Toronto. Ibrahim, where are you from, Ibrahim? I guess. Oh, there we go. Oh, from Amman, Jordan. That's a beautiful city, Amman, Jordan. Got a great museum there.
Durango. I was near there one time.
Durango, Dallas, more from the UK, Calgary. Oh,
Jordan.
Cape
Oh,
Town. Simone from Cape Town. Coming a long way. Got Cody from Franklin,
Stuttgart.
Andreas from Stuttgart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're getting people from all over here.
Global crew today. This is awesome.
It is a global crew. All righty. Should give about one more minute, Roger, and we'll get loaded up here. Got people. Oh, George Peters from Los Alamos. Forget that guy. Block him.
You happen to know George, do you?
Yes, yes. He has dirt on me. He could sit there and ruin the chat in seconds.
Uh-oh. Well, then you better behave.
Christoph, wohin auf Deutschland? Where from Germany are you? Dusseldorf. I haven't
Yes.
been there yet.
No, I don't think I have either, actually.
All right, Roger, I think we should just get the
Let's
ball
go.
rolling here. So,
Absolutely.
welcome everyone to the nightmares of product management. Wait for it. The out of control episode. Yes, folks, if you thought you were just going to come to a product management webinar, you're in the wrong place. We are going to talk about those things that keep us up at night as product managers. Roger, I think I want to hand it off to you.
Very good. Thank you, Dean. So, if you haven't been able to tell by now, today's webinar is going to be mostly from the illustrious Dean Peters, principal consultant and trainer based in Raleigh, North Carolina, although he has been doing a lot of travel lately. I am Roger Snyder. I will be your moderator today, and I will make snarky remarks at appropriate moments. And I'm based in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California. So welcome everyone. Love the global crowd that we have today. A couple of admin and introductory tasks that I will take care of, and then we will turn it over to Dean. If you're not familiar with Productside, we are an outcome-driven product partner. We focus on training and consulting for product members, principally product managers, but product management leaders, product owners, product marketing managers. We are here to help you become more effective in the discipline of product management and to transform your team to be more effective so that you can build awesome products that your customers love to take from you. We are very focused on making sure, no cookie cutters here. We make sure your product, our solutions are tailored to your needs. And we have invested experts, all folks with at least 15, 20, 25 or more years of experience in the product management discipline. Now, we want this to be an interactive and fun conversation today. So take a look at the bottom of your Zoom window. See that little Q&A square? We would love for you to click on that, type in questions. We will try to answer questions as they come up, but we will also save some time for the end of our webinar to deal with any other accumulated questions that we might have. Now, the number one question that we get during these webinars is, hey, can I watch this recording later? The answer is absolutely yes. You will receive an email follow-up, it's probably later today, but shortly after the webinar is complete, with a link to the recording, as well as links to additional resources. So look for that email. That will have the recording link. You can then share that link with your friends, and we look forward to you sharing this, all of these different things that we're going to talk about today. Lastly, I'd love to invite you to join us on LinkedIn. We have a fantastic, like 50,000 member Productside product management group on LinkedIn. It's a great place for you to see what's going on in the wonderful world of product management to ask questions, to share your own insights as well. And it's a great place to network with peers across the whole product management spectrum. Yeah, let's show them what we're going to talk about today. Yes. So today, if you attended our spooky webinar about this time last year, you were introduced to some product management nightmares, but we have some new ones for you today. 5 new nightmares and how to deal with them. I'm not going to read all of them to you, but here they are. We're going to go over them one at a time, have some conversation about them. Again, invite you to offer your questions and even offer in the chat some suggestions of your own for how to deal with these problems. We will spend some time at the end talking about overall perspectives on how to solve the problem, right? Give you some ideas there. And then we will have some time for Q&A. We'll share with you a nice little offer that you will gain from attending this webinar in order to take advantage of upcoming courses that we're offering. And then we'll spend some time in Q&A. Now, over to you, Dean.
All righty. So just when you thought you got over last year's product management nightmares, they're back. And like a bad burrito, it's returned as Nightmares 2.0. So let's talk about some of these new product management nightmares. First, we have roadmap roadkill. We're all about our shifting priorities there. We're going to talk about the taking of feature 1, 2, 3. We're going to talk about the MVP from hell. We're going to talk about the product that would not die. And then finally, the AI that ate my job.
Ah.
Yeah. Now, like I said, these are add-on from last year. If you didn't remember what we did last year, we had Scrumzilla, the beast that eats your backlog alive. Frankensoft, when you stitch together all those horrible products from an acquisition here. The Escape from the Feature Factory, the Night of the Living Bugs, and the feature from the Black Lagoon. Now, with all those nightmares in mind, we have a poll quiz here. So which one of these situations keeps you up at night the most? So can we go ahead and run the poll, please? There we go. There's our poll. So pick the one nightmare that keeps you up at night the most as a product manager.
It's a tight race going on here.
I know, right? I'm not going to give away what the race is about just yet. We don't want to taint the results.
That's right. With elections 1 week away here in the United States anyway, we can't share early results.
All right, we got a few more people. All right, I think it's time to share the results, don't you, Roger?
I agree.
All right, so let's share the results. I'll bring them on screen for myself here, okay? So it looks like the ever-changing roadmap, which will be our first topic here. Feature creep, not delivering on time, aging products, and concerns over AI. So nice little breakout. Some different data than we've had before. So it looks like we get to learn some things as well. All right, so let's dive right in. Welcome to the roadmap roadkill here. This is about your carefully planned roadmaps as they swerve off the road or get run over by things like emergency fixes, shifting priorities, the executive drive-by. And then there's some other problems we have. It's dead on arrival. Folks, it's not a roadmap, it's a Gantt chart in disguise. Underneath that disguise, it's actually a Gantt chart zombie. And then you have death by 1,000 cuts. Can you add this one more thing to the roadmap? It's just a little fix. Could you have room to squeeze this? It's not a big job. It shouldn't take your team that long. And then we got that hit and run, where just when you think things are, sense of normalcy, in runs the hippo, the highest paid person with the opinion, and where it's like, hey, stop what you're doing and start working on this other thing here. For example, we've had more than one product manager get run over by the hippo saying, stop what you're doing and put ChatGPT in my product, as if that were a feature set. So Roger, I think, we want to stop here because we saw in our poll that we got a lot of people dealing with a lot of pain on this thing here.
Hmm.
I think when you and I teach the topic of roadmaps, we actually talk about, is it a product roadmap or is it a release plan? What are we
Right.
dealing with here? Um, I thought I might kick that up into the air a little bit here, that ball, and what you think, because I know for myself, every time I've had to go in and look at a roadmap, 7 times out of 10, it's a release plan.
Right.
It's a bunch of features
Mhm.
on a timetable, very tightly held. Some of them even have resourcing. And it's not that I have anything against release plans, but those are tactical conversation pieces.
Right.
And the roadmap, at least the way we teach it, should be a strategic a conversation piece. Myself, I always ask people, like right now, I was just teaching a group on roadmaps and radiators. And one of the things I asked them, I said, what is your product going to look like on January 1st of 2026? And the reason I asked that question is, where's your product going? And then
Hmm.
what are you going to do incrementally to mature it in that direction here? That's really where your focus of your roadmap should be. It should be that strategic plan by creating outcomes, and that's outcomes that are so delightful, so different, so ROI enhancing for our customers that they're willing to take money out of their wallets and put it into ours. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll be the first to admit that early on in my product management career, and yes, this was last century, but I was just as guilty of this as the next person. I had these neat roadmaps with a nice 4 columns, 1 quarter each, right? 12-month roadmap with lists of features in boxes, and I would color them differently to kind of indicate how confident we were in getting those lists out. But yes, it was all about features, right?
Yeah,
And not at all connected to what are we trying to accomplish here. And I think to your point earlier, we need to be thinking about what we're going to try to accomplish in 2 dimensions. One, what are our business objectives? What are we as Acme company trying to accomplish this year? Are we trying to gain market share? Are we trying to increase customer satisfaction? Are we trying to reach a revenue number? We want to keep track of those things for ourselves, make sure that we are thinking about those outcomes. But then the more important thing is, what are the product outcomes? What are the things our customers are trying to achieve? And to your earlier point, how do we get them to open their wallet and want to buy our product to solve their problems? And
right.
changing that roadmap to be focused on that is crucial to the success. That's for sure.
Yeah, and especially when it gets into those negotiations where someone from sales is coming in. So that's sort of the rhino, really high value, new opportunity. They come rolling in and saying, look, I need this on the roadmap to make the sale. Okay. How are you going to, you just can't sit there and negotiate by saying, oh, no, no, that's not strategic. That's tactical. We're not going to put on the roadmap. That's a great way to lose influence without authority, and which is
Mhm.
all we actually have. Because as you remember, product managers, we have influence without authority, which means we need to be really good at our social and networking skills. So we really don't want to turn a salesperson into an adversary just by sort of shooting them down that way. We really need to be a little more diplomatic and sort of draw them in and start figuring out, okay, what problem are we trying to solve and who are we trying to solve it for? Then we
Mhm.
might have some conversations. Can we run some experiments on it? Can we run some tests on it? Instead of just putting on the roadmap now and using hope as a strategy, could we have a conversation with the customer and show them our roadmap, or at least a version of it, and saying, look, right now we're focused on problem X, but you have a very interesting problem Y here. Would you mind if we put this into the next quarter on the roadmap here? So again, it's getting to the outcomes here. What is the pain or what is the gain they're trying to get out of
Right.
this here, and shifting that conversation away from just the, hey, I want the red button on this screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
So
I want to address that death by a thousand cuts one with some
yeah,
practical advice. One thing that I have done successfully at 2 different companies in 2 different ways, but the same basic principle applied, is reserve some development resources so
yeah,
that you had a strategic roadmap, you've got those outcomes you're driving for, but you've got some spare cycles of development to deal with the real situation of, hey, there's a real bug here. We got to fix this.
yeah,
Or I need this to close a sale. I want to help the salesperson get that sale closed. I've got
right.
some resources available that aren't dedicated to the roadmap that are there for that purpose.
Yeah, we can't take that purist look here. We got to leave some of that reserve there. There are some situations where you got to keep the lights on. All right. In other
Hmm.
words, it's like, look, as much as we hate to do this right now, um, and then what that does, the roadmap, if it's outcome focused, it lets you go back to the other stakeholders and explain to them, look, we have changing road conditions here. Think of this more like Google Maps than a printed Rand McNally map. I realize I just aged us both, Roger. But instead of a printed map here, think about the advantage of Google Maps is making a 100-mile journey. Road conditions are going to change. There's going to be accidents. There's going to be closures. There's going to be speed traps, and so you need to make sure that you don't over allocate. That's why I'm a big proponent, especially when I. It's interesting. I remember, I think it was taking one of these safe certification training. Oh, here's your now, next, later, and everybody just put a bunch of junk and features in now.
Hmm.
And as you look at that, it's just like, yeah. And then when they try to do it in real life, it's metaphysically impossible.
Right.
It's unlimited, unlimited opportunities with limited resource, and they had no focus. So now you're taking
Hmm.
your poor engineer teams and, okay, well, we're going to work on this one area of interest here. And so they get their heads wrapped around that. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to yank them all the way over to the other side of the product. And now they sort of have to start from, so a lot of context switching happening for our teams. And then we wonder why they can't move faster.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
worse, then you get that situation. Well, you have 5 people on the team. Can they work on 5 different things? At which point you don't have a team anymore,
Right.
right? So you got, and so a good strategic roadmap helps paint that picture, especially as you're trying to manage up.
Yeah.
Look, this is what we see the product being in 2026. This is how
Hmm.
we see it being so delightful, so different, so margin enhancing for our customers that it actually boosts our own business model goals, or our own, for those of you on platform product, helps us make those operational savings that the company is trying to make. Because I think, Roger, that's the other thing. We need to understand that the top line should be the business outcome. What's in it for us? What's in it for us as a company? And that's immediately followed and laddered up by what's in it for the customer. That's so compelling for them that they buy into our business model.
Right. Completely agree. Yeah. So a couple of tips there, right? Be more
Mhm.
focused on business outcomes and product outcomes in a real roadmap view, and save some resources so that you can handle the inevitable things that come up.
Yep. And if they do come flying in, take that solution conversation. It's like, hey, let me think about this red button. What are they trying to get done with the red button? Get that solution down to a problem space. You may
Right.
actually find that you can bring it in. It may not be the red button, but you're going to take care of that customer need.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. Take care. And if once you figure out a way of taking care of the customer need, you can negotiate with them.
Absolutely.
All right. Are we ready for the next terror that keeps us up at night here?
Okay, let's do it.
The taking of feature 1, 2, 3. All right. It's this hostage drama that unfolds here, where critical features are held hostage by the stakeholders, or as I like to call it, feature hostage negotiations. And it happens in a bunch of different forms here. You have the stakeholder standoff here. Nobody's budging, and your features are held as hot. So you got multiple stakeholders working on a product here. Each one is holding, I'm not going to fund this. I'm not going to sponsor this. I'm not going to support
Hmm.
this unless I get what I want.
Right.
Um, you have what I call epic ransom here. That's when what do you call it there? You find yourself paying up, to get things done by making compromise, a bunch of just a one-off compromises. And these one-off compromises there just create all sorts of technical debt. They cause delays in your delivery. They cause frustrations. And then you got the feature hostage negotiation, which is usually your big wallet clients, your biggest client, and they know they're your biggest clients. Listen, I'm not going to resubscribe unless I get this Excel spreadsheet of 70 features rolled through here.
Right.
Just speaking from horrible experience there. Uh, and I'm curious, maybe some people there, either in the comments or the questions there, what are some situations where you felt like you were up against feature hostage negotiations, where you felt like, you were getting a lot of down pressure here to where people were basically, I don't know, doing things like not budging until you gave them what they want, or were basically, again, that's at, death by 1,000 cuts. I'm sort of curious if there's anyone out there in the audience, anyone out there in the, any of the viewers out there who have some thoughts or comments on this.
Yeah, so pop those in either in Q&A or in chat for
Yep,
sure.
Q&A or chat, put those in. We want to hear from you on this, right?
Mhm.
Roger, you got any stories about this? I have a few.
Oh, I have one for sure. I have many, but the one I was thinking about as I was looking at your slide was how do I get out of this, bickering and turn it into a collaborative conversation? Once
Right.
upon a time, we actually used literal monopoly money. I mean, we brought in the game to a conference
Yep.
room. We brought in all the sales folks from all the regions. They were in town, and this was a
Yep.
good time for us to do this. And we passed out the monopoly money in accordance with what revenue forecast they had signed up for, right?
Ooh.
Okay, so the
So you're not talking about
European,
holding salespeople accountable, are you?
right? So the VP of sales of Europe got more money than the VP of sales of South America, and so forth, right? So they each got their dollars, and
Hmm.
we then put up a set of features with dollar amounts associated with them. And this was a buy a feature exercise, if you've heard of that capability or that prioritization technique. And what was
Right.
exciting was that we shifted from adversarial to collaborative. The VP of Asia and the VP of Europe got together and said, look, I'll buy this feature if you go buy that feature, right? And they actually got into a conversation and they realized that we couldn't have everything. They looked at the
Right.
list of everything on the board, and that if they collaborated, they could get the most important things. It was
Yeah,
an
I saw
exciting
I saw Todd Block
switch.
here do the same thing. We had like five, we had three different sponsors and six different stakeholders who had no awareness of each other and walked through the bio feature prioritization there. And all of a sudden, yeah, you saw them negotiating. I did hear of one story where that went sideways and they started, getting very adversarial. And that product manager just basically just took a step back and just let it run its course. Um,
Mm,
I was thinking of a situation when I was my first time as a director of product with a product line, and we had one customer, very, very large customer, had several of our products there. And so they were sort of throwing around like, look, we want to sign up, but you need to get these things done for us here. Um, I basically went out and counted up the cost there, saying, look, if we build these, all right, here's how long we think it's going to take. Here's how much it's going to raise the price of the product for you because here's how much and basically showed them the cost. And then I told them about the opportunity costs, about certain workarounds they may not have been available. So once I got them to see things in terms of the cost and in terms of the lift and the payout there, I was going to put myself in a position where I could then say, well, let me show you some alternative ways through our product to do this. Let me give you some alternatives of what we think we should build to respond to this outcome you're looking for, as
mhm,
opposed to, because they were like coming and build this API for this, put a screen for this, and I'm trying to figure out, all right, what they're trying to do is just get a certain facility rented here. We don't need to go through all this hand waving because these people were not professionals in terms of system design. And so we was able to get some good negotiation and show them how we could bake this in because how many of us have heard, well, I know I want this feature and here it comes. I'm sure all your other customers would like them too. I mean, we always hear that one. Oh, good, we're getting some information here. So let's go
mhm.
ahead and look at some of the comments we have here.
Yeah.
So we got Anna. I have a situation right now where the business wants X feature, but will not dedicate resources. Ooh, all right. They have known that we'll need data at this point and for this project for months.
Mm,
What are I mean, I got some thoughts on that. The first thing here, because look, if you don't have the resources, then at some point you're robbing Peter to pay for Paul. So you need to show them where we're going to be stealing those resources from. We can do X, but don't think that Y and Z aren't impacted because we
right.
can't ask our people to work 24/7 and on weekends. So either we figure out, but here's the problem. You go out that way, they're going to ask you, all right, tell me how much it's going to cost. And oh, by the way, tell me when if I'm going to give you, 500,000, tell me when I see my 5 million in return.
Right.
Tell me when I see it. So just be aware of that. But I might paint them a picture of saying, look, here's the reality. these other areas are going to suffer. Are you willing to give up on these other opportunities? Because there's no way around it. If you're not going to bring in more resource, if you're not going to provide infrastructure here, then, I think it was Sun Tzu who said strategy without tactics is the long road to victory, but tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And this
Mm-hmm.
question here sounds like you're on that long road and possibly on that way to defeat. So hopefully that answers your question for you, Anna, is show them the opportunity cost here. All right, Ibrahim. Yeah, go
Ibrahim as
ahead.
well.
Yeah, you want to go? You want to look at that one?
Yeah, so Ibrahim's talking about a classic problem, right? Executive stakeholders, they're driving the features. They've got a pet project or a short-term gain. They want to appease investors, but that's not aligned with the overall product strategy or roadmap. And I want to just echo again, right, Dean, what you said and add a little bit to it in terms of you've got to express what are the opportunity costs. Okay, fine. You want to go after this pet project. It's going to cost roughly this much, but here's what we can't do as a result of that, and draw them into the conversation. Make the executives own some of this decision. All right,
Yeah,
you really think this is the most important thing for us to do next? It means we can't do this, this, and this. Are you all, executive team, or whoever your decision makers are, whenever you want to make a roadmap change, are you all bought in to making that change, to sacrificing the strategy for this pet project? And hopefully, with some ROI involved there's going to be a more thoughtful conversation.
Yeah. And Roger, I'll add to that. So what you said, and I wish I had figured this out much earlier in my career. So when that person comes in and says like, hey, I need this now. Again, this is where I pull out the strategic roadmap and say, all right, look, this is where we're trying to get to. These are the other stakeholders who are impacted. I would need to hold a meeting with them. When you leave this meeting, let me know how I need to support you on what you're proposing, because some of what they're going to be working on needs to be delayed or have resource taken. And I basically say, like, I'm fine with putting it on the roadmap, but first you need to defend this to the other stakeholders. So in other words, don't let them toss it over the fence. Don't make it your problem to have to defend it. If they do make you defend it, here's the other thing. Hey, can we run some small experiments on it first? Can we run some testing just to see how big the need or the impact is? Maybe can we run a quick set of feasibility tests and along with it, do a couple of value grabs here? And we're not talking long, extensive testing here, but just getting some data and some feedback from the customer base and some other people in here to say like, and so what you're not doing, you're not telling them no. What you're really telling them is not yet, not until we have a better clear. So, I mean, I've said more than once, I don't have a clear picture. I would need to run some small experiments. We're only talking about one a week or so, maybe two. Now, here's the nice thing about it. I have been pleasantly surprised in those cases where I could take some of what they wanted and delivered it now as part of the current initiative and say, look, I can give you this part of it now. Right. I can't give you this other part until the next time horizon here.
Agreed.
All right. Got Jenny struggling with client support team thinking every client, oh, well, okay, every time it will churn if we don't give them what they want this week. Yeah. I feel your pain there. If we don't give the client, and understand that, listen, I have nothing but the highest praise of people in client support. I would mention they are incentivized different than we are, right? They are incentivized by, what they get hired, fired, and promoted for is on how well they make the customer feel in the support stance. We get hired, fired, and promoted on making sure we build the right thing at the right time. So part of that is also having that conversation with the people in support and letting them get to see the world through all that. Not allow with technical debt. So we'll get into some of these other things. Stakeholder constantly insisting on building features, because they're VIP. And again, some of these techniques that we just mentioned, Simone, would be some of the things I might mention here.
I'll add one more thing here, Dean, on Lori's comment, right? Once a funded feature does bump the strategic roadmap, you want to memorialize that decision. You write it down. And I don't mean reams of documentation. I mean a paragraph or two that says, on this date, we made this choice in order to handle this issue. We're going to do some experimentation to double check it, But if we end up doing this, this will be the impact on the strategic initiatives in our product roadmap. You write it down, you memorialize it, you send it to everybody, and then you've got it again to remind folks when that question will inevitably come up because people forget.
Right.
But a month later, you'll say, look, we sent this out. You know why we made this choice.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on to the next. I think we're going to cover some of these other issues here. Let's talk about one of my least favorites, the MVP from hell. All right, this is the never-ending MVP. This is the one that spins out of control. Think about scope creepocalypse, where there's nothing but endless features. From the time that poor MVP was raised till it goes to the grave, or what I call lost in space. The MVP goes out and it's left to die in a state of GA-ness, general availability. And then we got release purgatory. Um, Listen, it's not really an MVP. It's actually your first increment of many. So we've got some of these situations here with that. I think Roger, you and I were talking about your lost in space experience that you had.
Yes, I've been dealing with two different clients in the last 6 months that have had this problem of they do actually get the MVP out, but then everybody's attention shifts. The
Yep.
executives, the business leaders, they all say, great, the product's out. Shoo, that's fantastic. We're done. On we go. Not realizing that it really was an MVP and that there needed to be future releases to continue to build out that product, make it more robust, deal with all the other things that couldn't be handled in the first release. So in that case, what I have coached both of these clients to do is look, you've got to come up with what are the 3 to 5 strategic objectives you're going after and the metrics for success. And then you point out with the MVP, for example, only 2 of the 5 are actually going to be met in the first release in this MVP.
Yeah.
To meet
Right.
the other 3, we will need future releases. And again, get everybody to buy in and understand that. That should lead to a more effective way to get resources for the follow-up releases, pointing out, well, we need 3, 4, and 5 now to actually be able to achieve those. We've got to have future releases in order to achieve those.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, for example, I put 2 quotes in here, right? My customers won't buy it unless we add all the features. I cannot tell. Yeah, that to me is like, that was scope creepocalypse. And I made the mistake of just sitting there trying to say, oh, they won't buy it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And it fell down. And then the other one was, why can't we just make the MVP version 1.0?
Right.
Sort of that bait and switch type thing. Hey, build us an MVP, get us some validation. And then this poor thing goes out the door and like, oh no, that's version 1. You can't start over again here. Yeah, yeah, and it looks like she's had so many MVPs left to die. It's very interesting. You read Eric Ries and in the lean startup, and he talks about MVPs being disposable. Look, they're here for a point. I think Marty Kagan talks about this. What was his first book there? Used to know, and was not empowered. It's not transformed. It's inspired. So
Oh
his
yeah.
very first book, Inspired, he talks about probes, and I think and I think he uses that, and so it's interesting. From that I learned to change my language as well. My last few jobs never used the term MVP. I
Oh,
would call it a proof of life.
okay.
Now think about it, because what I'm saying is like, look, because now, first of all, think about it first of all by renaming it, because
Mm-hmm.
most times seen an MVP, it's neither minimum nor is it viable. Heck, in many cases, it's not even a product at that point. It's just a hodgepodge of complexity that where you're just trying to make everyone happy, like, oh well, we got to do this, we got to do that, and it's like no. And I think Roger, you said something really germane to some of the things I had to learn the hard way. First of all, your MVP is not made for all audiences.
Right.
So if you haven't figured out who your early adopters are, if you don't have a core of champion customers who are willing to tell you the baby is ugly early on,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're not working with engineers who are matured enough to understand there is no money to be made in building big horizontal slices of platform up front. That
Right.
is just hubris of trying to be able to tell, I'm going to build a platform that's resilient to all, any resilient to anything that comes down the road every 2 years, as if we could tell the future. I mean, think about all the people who invested in all these different search technology. There was a whole bunch of people spending money with Elasticsearch, combining it with Graph and everything. and they spent millions on building this platform, taking them years to get out there, and all of a sudden ChatGPT comes along and just swipes it away. Yeah,
Right.
you can't, yeah. So there's some things there where we have to take care of as well. Yeah, the MVP, Christoph, the MVP got out. Well, we wanted to scale it. Did you run it through a proper RFQ? Yeah, the competition keeps rolling out. So that's part of the other reason why we want the strategic roadmap, and part of the reason why you're going to get more done by focusing on less. I will say that again. You're going to get more done by focusing on less. So keep your MVP tiny. As Roger
Mm,
said, don't go for all 50 features. Go
right.
for the two. Because think about it. The very first time your engineers start writing code, they're still learning about their infrastructure. They're still learning about the problem. So unless you want to create technical debt really fast, and that's what happens when you try to cram in all the features at once, or you try to make again go down this misguided path of horizontal slices. Getting those narrow vertical slices out and getting feedback sooner is the way to win that game
I
here.
like I like your idea of changing the name, proof of life, in order to get people thinking
I
differently.
banned MVP my last two jobs. I said it's a proof of life, because then it just changes everyone's. Look, we want to see if there's an appetite, and is it an appetite for this that is so compelling that they're again so delightful, so different, so margin enhancing that they're willing to take money out of their wallets and put it into ours.
Mhm. Yep.
All right. We could talk about MVP from heck all day. The one that just goes out. I think it was Corey Bryan who runs ran the Deliver It podcast here in Raleigh. Uh, yeah, he talked about that. So don't call it an MVP then, just call it version one.
Mm,
If the mindset is that we're going to keep adding to it, because otherwise, what happens when you generally tell your engineers it's an MVP? Do they take shortcuts, or do they build with resiliency?
mhm.
I mean, in all cases, they should be building with resiliency. But when they know it's an MVP and the mindset is around an MVP, there's going to be shortcuts, there's going to be technical debt, and that stuff's going to show up in the middle of the night like a bad dream.
Oh,
Okay. All righty. Speaking of bad dreams, oh, here's one. The product that wouldn't die, 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 die. All right, this is the outdated product that you've been saddled with. I feel sorry for a lot of people coming into product management, because quite often they're given, the dirty work, and part of that dirty work is taking on a product that nobody else wants to work on because
right.
it's old, it's crufty, it's a zombie product. It's back. It's still. It's like I thought that, especially if you're working in a product line. Hey, I thought that product was dead. Why was so? Or the technical debt, the tomb of technical debt, where it's
Hmm.
just, bug city. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a 20-year-old product here. We should have been doing a lot of weeding, weeding and pruning of our garden here, but we didn't. Oh no,
Right.
boy, if I got a story for that one. And then we got the undead feature creep. This is again just bolting on features, creating that Frankensoft type of experience by just bolting on a bunch of more dead features on the dead features here. So I don't know. You got any thoughts on? Because let me tell you my story about that. And this was
Yeah,
actually
go for
a
it.
dead feature that wasn't that first of all, it was from a product that was never really well updated, with a feature that was never really treated well. So American Capital, they were a trading company, and they had some different trading platforms. They were running an experimental trading platform that had a feature for automated training. And they
Oh.
decided, and so first of all, the first thing they ran it, didn't really pan out, but they decided to keep it around for the infrastructure and use it for other purposes. So they were going to repurpose some of that instead of killing it off. And when they
Hmm.
repurposed it, they didn't kill things off properly. So they had one feature there, which was their algorithm. And they decided, instead of using an outside in instrumentation for feature toggling, like Launch
Oh,
Darkly, like
right.
Split, like a few other they decided to roll their own feature flags system
Of
here,
course.
which is always, just creating more debt on top of debt. So the automated feature was turned off. The system was incorporated. It was never pruned. What do you suppose happened 9 years later when a new programmer rolled around and found that little piece of code and didn't understand the feature toggle?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yikes.
flip the
Mhm.
switch on. $480 million lost in 45 minutes.
Whoa.
480, yeah. So that product, yeah, first of all, it should have died. It shouldn't have been bolted on. If you were going to bolt it on, it should have gone through killing off some of the dead. I mean, remove the dead features.
Right.
Don't just turn them on, especially with a homemade switch. Are you nuts?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just sort of. So you're just asking for trouble. So I don't know if you've got a story about a product that wouldn't die. I know you had some experience over at Microsoft, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh man, you're giving me PTSD. Um, no, I won't talk about the Microsoft situation, but I will talk about the migration situation, right? So
Okay.
as you are trying to kill a product, what you need to do is show new value, incremental, small, new value in the thing that you're going to move towards. So my one bit of advice there is think about delighters. All right.
Yeah.
Can you put a delighter or two into the new version, the thing that's going to be moved towards? So you're going to tell people, look, we're sunsetting this product. Now, the other thing about this, when you're trying to sunset products, is you need long lead times. All right. So you've got to build
Yeah.
a plan that could even be a year, right? Or maybe even more. Like if you're working with the military, like I had to at one point, it could be multiple years of migration. And you're going to slowly move them from one platform to the other, but demonstrate the value of the new platform. Give them some
Yeah.
carrots, some delighters that are going to show them the reason why they need to move to this platform. It can't just be about, well, I got to get rid of COBOL and I got to move on to a whole new kind of programming system. It's got to be about
Right.
the real value customers are going to appreciate and receive.
Yeah, I don't think how many people in our work with product management, especially and engineering, understand that the people in the chief financial office, if for them, if it's working, why are they going to break it? And what
Mhm.
happens is with that CFO taking that stance, you see that the CEO and some of these other C-level executives, they're starting to think like, look, this thing is working right now. Let's just can we ride it a little longer?
Right.
Can we invest in things? We want to grow the business, not reinvest in something where its growth has been stunted here. So I think you're right. Unless you can show them a path to growth, then you need to show them a path to exit. That reminds me when I was over at Citrix, and we had to kill off the remote PC product. Now, it had
Oh,
gone, Citrix had gone through a lot of iterations when I got there. I think they were on their fifth CEO, and along the way, they'd gotten rid of a lot of their, what do you call it, remote products there. And so the company, I was like, go to meeting and all that. Those products went to the company that ran that, and so they actually, what do you call it, divested from that and created its own entity. But they kept the remote product because two CEOs prior to my arrival, they decided to keep the remote PC thing as a pet project. So now I'm in a situation, and I get the knock on the door. Dean, you got to bring this thing to end of life. And I said, well, what are we going to replace for it? Well, we're not.
huh.
Okay. So then I'm
Yikes.
sitting here, I'm talking and saying, well, the people over at Go2, they got the code base too, and they're running their own version too. They charge a little more for that, but they're pretty much running
Mm.
it. And so I start having questions like I talked to one of the engineers. The data, how portable is it? Oh, I think they're using the same data structures we are. The same. Really? Get on a call with the Go2 people saying, look, we're going to bring this end to life. We want you to become get on a marketing campaign with us. We are willing to turn over those customers to you.
Right.
And if you offer them a steep, and I mean, it was like 70% discount for their first 2 years of the product, they get that steep discount here. Now, the thing was that product was usually part of a larger bundle that made part of the. So for us, we were just selling it as an add-on, like, hey, if you do this, we'll also throw in this product. So
Mm-hmm.
for us, we didn't have a lot of financial projection there, in terms of how much revenue. But for the Go-To group, over on the other side, it did mean revenue for them. So they were willing to cut that deal.
Right.
Uh, Two things we did right by the customer. We gave them an alternate path. We, gave them, instead of just giving them, 6 months to get off, we gave them a few years to get off,
Mm-hmm.
if they wanted to. And one other thing I should mention, my first stop actually wasn't with engineering. Any thoughts to what my first two stops were?
I'm sure you talked to sales.
Well, sales is actually my third stop.
Okay.
All right. So legal was my first stop.
Ah, yes.
Now it just happened that Abe was just a few desks down, and you had to go work. So I was like, hey, by the way, you know, what's the threat of lawyers on this? And then the other one, I stopped at
Mm-hmm.
finance because they had projected revenue, even though this product was already supposed to be at end of life.
Right.
Or what do you call it, end of service here. And so I made sure to understand what the revenue, because they were like, what do you mean? We have some projections on this. So as you have, part of the reason why a product won't die, people haven't talked to legal, people
Right.
haven't talked to finance.
Right.
Legal and worries about getting sued. Haven't talked to finance about projections for the year. They haven't talked to sales and how that impacts their packaging and their promotions here. And then, of course, haven't talked to the customer to find out, how likely are you to churn on me overnight when we pull the plug on this.
Sure.
So to your point, we got to give them that path to value there.
Absolutely. Good
All right.
examples. I hope that helps folks.
All right.
What's next?
The AI that ate my job. All right. There's a lot of talk out there about automation coming in and replacing our jobs. The bot apocalypse here, where AI quietly takes over all of your product management tasks. The AI algorithmic takeover, slowly replacing the decisions you make. And then that Skynet moment here, where when the machines finally outsmart you and your roadmap. You're like,
Yep.
no, we don't want you to build that. We're going to do this instead. So yeah, there's a couple of those. I have some strong opinions about this that are not popular, but Roger, maybe you want to start this off, and then I can be controversial.
Well, no, let's start with the controversy because I think my comments will come better after you drop that bomb, particularly that experience you had at a panel.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, let me tell you all a story. I'm on a panel a couple months ago.
Hmm?
There's 4 people on the panel. The panel is about AI and product management. I am that fourth guy on the end seat here, right? There's like, oh, we'll put Dean. Yeah, Dean has a face for radio, so we'll go ahead and put him on the end, not to scare the children, right? And so it was interesting, and I don't think they did it on purpose. But the first person, panelist number one, was very academic and very full of themselves. The next person was a very, wasn't so, pious or, puffed up, but, they're still very theoretical. The next person was more practical, but you could see it got to them. And then, of course, there was the Dean factor at the end. So question comes up, will AI replace our jobs? First person, no, 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 it can't do that. It can't think like we can. It can't. And so he comes up with all these things I've heard before. It's not creative. It
Right.
can't do this. It can't do that. And so, he sort of puffs out there, and I'm like, okay. And the next person's like, well, I think it'll replace 1 or 2 things here. It'll be able to do recommendations, but I don't think. And then the next person is like, well, I use it for some day-to-day tasks here, but I don't see it. And then, of course, there was me, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, your job as a product manager today is dead. Right? Product management, as you know it, on October of 30th of 2024 is dead, and AI killed it. And so, unless you figure out where it's going to help, both impact your business model, which is how you're making money for the company, and your operational model, which is how you get things done, you're
Right.
going to be in a heap world of trouble, because and that's the other thing that annoys me, the whole title thing, AI product manager. I find that's just an act of hubris there. All right. Listen, we are all, congratulations. By the way, everyone here listening in, you are all now AI product managers, whether you want to be or not. Just
Right.
like, what was it, 12, 15 years ago, we are all mobile product managers, whether we wanted to be or not.
Hmm.
It's one of those disruptive technologies that just changes everything.
Yep.
So yeah. So again, I like to tell people congratulations. So there's my controversial opinion, in that product management, as you know it, right now, it's dead. It is going to get replaced.
So let's talk more about that. You've scared them all. So let's try to give them a little bit of rays of sunshine in this dark forest. I'm reminded of the story of 2 hikers, right? One hiker's lacing up his running shoes, and the other hiker is like, "Yeah, you're never going to outrun that bear." And the other one says to him, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to
Right.
outrun you." So if
Yep.
AI is this bear coming at you, you need to become proficient at the use of AI in your job.
Yep.
You're I'm so excited about it, honestly. I'm using it to build personas. Dean used it to build these posters. I'm using it to be a sounding board for ideas because I can't think of everything, but I come up
Right.
with ideas and I then have a conversation with the AI to pick up those things that I missed. It helps me do research. It helps me pull together things. It helps me write stories more effectively. So you've
Yeah.
got to become an effective AI product manager yourself.
Right. So both the and that's the operational side, how to get your day-to-day work done and how you need to bring it into your product.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to get challenged to bring AI into your product. What does that mean? All right, where am I going to play? Where am I going to win here? So there's that. I'm curious what some of the people out in our audience might think about that.
Yeah. Good question. Let's ask them
Because
and
we
tell
because we
them.
didn't see a lot of concerns over AI. When I looked at the survey there, I think we had
That's
like
right.
2%
Right.
of
That's
people
a good
saying, well, they
point.
weren't concerned. I was like, a little surprising there.
I was surprised by that as
But
well.
by the way, while they're waiting for some questions here, do you think we should show them how to generate their own posters?
Absolutely.
All right, let me show you how to generate. I will share this link with you. I have been building prompts for product managers here. As part of
Mm-hmm.
our AI course, I've been thinking through this problem here. And one of the things I've been doing here, and so I decided what could be more fun besides, jobs to be done, besides, user stories, besides roadmaps here, besides, generating press releases of FAQs. What if I could generate some of my own posters here? So I've got this prompt here, and I'll share the link. And you cut and paste the link in. I've already cut and pasted in. Let's run it. All right. So Roger, help me do this. The first question is, what product management challenges keep you up at night? So I think we heard here, we heard a couple here, right? Um, you
The
know,
roadmap.
so so let's talk about the roadmap. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I got I got hippos and rhinos always blowing up my product roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there we go. Number one. Number two, what's the next? Let's see. All right. Who are the victims of this? My customers, my engineering team, especially my engineers who feel like they're working in a feature factory.
Right.
Eh, don't worry about the typo. They'll fix it.
It's
All
gonna.
right. And last, one more question here. All righty. What nightmarish consequences? Oh, we'll release 100 features where only 2 are valuable. So we answered those 3 questions here. And here's my movie title, The Stampede of the Feature Factory, when
Mm-hmm.
hippos and rhinos are roam free over your roadmap here.
Right.
In a seemingly peaceful product team, when the roadmap was carefully plotted. Oh, you see, it has a story here. And then we
Mm-hmm.
have the warning signs. We have, oh,
And
look,
then the voice of the
Roger,
customer.
survival.
Love
We need to talk about survival. In fact, let's go ahead and time. And by the way, I'll say, please. So please generate a movie poster. So while it's doing that, let's go to our next slide here and talk about ways of remediating this. How do you get things back in control, people? All right.
Right.
So first of all, outcomes over outputs every day of the week in every way. Use your OKRs to measure the progress towards outcomes. What's in it for them that's so delightful, different, and margin enhancing that they're going to take money out of their wallet and put into ours. Create that outcome-based roadmap instead of a feature-driven one, and communicate outcomes to your stakeholders every day and in every way. Transparent prioritization. Don't do this in a vacuum. Get your stakeholders involved, get their feet under the table, get them to feel like they're contributing, because if they are, they'll go to bat and defend, and help your defense. Regularly communicate, the rationale between prioritization decisions. What prioritization method are you using? Make them aware of that. Establish your KPIs, your key performance indicators, as your success metrics here. What does success look like? Use customer data to validate product decisions and then continuously test. Now, I don't know if you've got one or two comments because I want to get us towards the end here because I think got 5 minutes left to wrap up here. Did you have any one or two things you wanted to add to this?
I was just putting some chat back. There were great comments from several folks, and it
Yep.
did talk about embracing it operationally, actually
Yeah.
using it, making me more efficient. I love all these comments, but
Yeah.
Tracy particularly made a good
Oh,
comment.
Tracy cracked me up with it's not a standalone feature, you know?
Exactly. It's
Yes.
something that we need to find out whether it'll be useful. So stay calm and stay in the problem space, one of our
Yep.
common refrains, and
Yep.
then see whether or not AI can, in fact, help you solve the problem. So I think everybody, that's why it was such a low answer. People are
Yeah.
getting, that's
Yep.
awesome.
By the way, there's our poster.
Yeah,
All right. So nice. So you can generate your
excellent.
own, right?
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
thanks for sharing that.
I'll share that. All right. Let me go to the next. All right. So Roger, I think we got one more quiz we want to take.
Oh, yeah, let's take this poll. So please
Yep.
launch the poll for us so we can
Starting
get
today,
this thing
what will you do
going.
differently?
Yes, absolutely.
And I will share the link to those prompts here
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I can
Awesome.
get back to that right URL
While we're running the poll, let's get that
while we're
going.
running the poll. I will share that.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to look at, oh, it's a visual. So
I think we have a special offer coming up, don't we?
we do. But while we're running the poll, I will mention also that next week on November 6th, Dean will be back with another
Yep.
one of our expert consultants, Ryan Cantwell, to talk about problem statements versus solution speak. And you'll be,
Yeah, solutions. Yeah, when those customers, stakeholders, and engineers come to you, hey, give me the red button. How do you
Mhm,
reframe that conversation here? All right,
absolutely.
I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and look at the results. Let me share the results here. All righty. Transparency of priorities. I like that.
Yes.
You can't go
Yes.
wrong with that. Involve stakeholders and test. Good. I think we're seeing some great things here.
That's great. And Christoph's got
Nice.
his hand raised. Why don't you go to the next slide? But let's see what Christoph has to ask.
All right.
Or can we invite him to speak?
Don't know if we can. I don't know if we're set up that way.
I don't know. I'm saying allow to talk. Christoph, if you unmute and ask your question briefly. Meanwhile, while he's getting ready for that, folks, use your smartphone to take a picture of this QR code and be able to take 10% off on our upcoming courses.
Any course, any
Any
course,
upcoming course.
OPM, APM,
Yep.
DPM, our AI course, 10% off.
Yep. Well, it doesn't look like
Here's our
Christoph.
upcoming webinar
Yep. We just talked about that one. Another QR code there.
and upcoming training.
All of these are courses that you can take advantage of with that 10% off code. Either use outcomes 10 off. And I want to point out that's a 10, then an OFF. Okay. Outcomes 10 off. Use that in checkout to get 10% off. And you can use this QR code to go right to
Yeah.
that.
I will say we just made a correction on this before the slides were changed. I will not be doing the AI course in November, but in January.
Oh, okay.
Just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. There was a change there.
Go to our website for the most up-to-date.
Yeah. So we got that. We got the Q&A here. So unless we got, I think we're just about 2 minutes in. Did we have any other questions we wanted to answer? I know Christoph had something here. Let's see. I got one from Nicolo here on the Q&A. How do you get customer data if you're in a B2B food business here? Well, the food business is actually B2B2C. So what type of products could I possibly give that other business to help them gather data on their customers that they would be willing to share with you in the aggregate? What I mean by the aggregate, meaning anonymized and rolled up. So in other words, saying, look, we can help give you, a way of seeing the data here. We can give you visualizations of the data for your customers. We will ask, we will discount you or make some other sort of bargain or do something, figure out some other way to help them, get them to share that with you. So that's one play you can make. Another play you can make is food industry has all sorts of market data out there. There are, restaurant, consortiums of restaurants. I know of a person here in Raleigh who heads up a chapter of food distributors here. So, for example, maybe I don't want to talk to the restaurants. Maybe I want to talk to the people distributing. And
Right.
so, there's data that you could possibly buy into, and there's all sorts of open source data here. So, if you can't capture the analytics directly, again, in the case of a food business, that is really a B2B to C. So figure out if there's any data you can share there. See if there's any open data that you could use to understand their job a little better as well. So hopefully, Nicola, that helps you helps you with that question there. And we got one more below here. Oh, just some. Okay, good. Just some comments here.
Fun.
So we're at the top of the hour. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. This will be online, and make some posters. Share them with us.
Yes. Thank you, Dean. Great stories and a very fun conversation.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.